Welcome to the UK PT's podcast, where we delve into the world of personal training one episode at a time. Here are your hosts, Joshua Mullin and Mark Laws.
Welcome to the UK PT's podcast. This is episode number 2. I'm Joshua Mullin, and this is my co-host, Mark Laws. How you doing, Mark?
I'm very good, Josh. I've just been to the gym, I've had a shower, I've had a sandwich, and I am ready to go.
Woohoo! So, today our guest is none other than Rachel France, who is, I have to say, the smartest person that I've ever met when it comes to biomechanics and a lot of the anatomical stuff that she teaches and just all that kind of that realm of information. So, I guess, Rachel's waiting for us. Should we let her in?
Yeah, let her in, mate. Let's see what she's let herself in for. Good afternoon, Rachel. Oh, no, good morning.
Morning.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you guys doing?
We are marvellous. Can you see us and hear us both all right?
I can. Can you see me okay? It's
I think so. Well, it's really, I've got the sun shining through the window,
same
so
here.
I'm sort of like squinting a little bit, but yeah, I can see you all right.
Okay. Good. That's fine then.
So, how's your day been so far, Rachel?
Busy. What have I done already? I get up at 5. I'm a ridiculously early bird. So I walked, some army freely, some yoga, checking emails, spoke to Simspa, sending out emails to learners, and then film editing. And it's only 11:17.
Wow.
Bloody hell.
Okay, so section 1, Rachel, is the 27 Club. These are our quick fire questions. I guess you've seen these already, but are you ready for this?
I'm absolutely ready. I'm slightly anxious now, but go for it.
It's normal. Everyone gets that way. Okay, so we're going to put 90 seconds. Have you got the timer, Mark?
Yeah, mate, I'm on stopwatch.
Good times. Okay, are you ready?
Go.
3, 2, 1. In which year did you qualify?
Qualify as what?
PT, gym instructor, fitness.
1996, 7.
And who was the education provider?
YMCA Fit, was it? I think back then, I'm not sure.
How long did it take to qualify?
6 weeks.
What was the last CPD course you completed?
Literally, I did what did I do recently? Oh no, you put me on the spot. I do it all the time because I class reading as CPDs. I can't remember. I'd have to have a look. Can I come back to it? Yes.
What's the next
You can come back.
course that you have your eye on?
Say that again.
What's the next course you're going to do? CPD.
I am looking at a management program potentially.
Nice. What's the highest level of qualification or education that you've got?
Qualified teacher status.
Nice.
30 seconds to go.
Should a PT ever be reassessed? And if so, how often?
Oh, no, if they are CPD to the eyeballs, no, not necessarily.
What skill did you gain on your PT course that you use most often today?
I have never done a PT course.
There we go. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at your job?
5. I'm quite self-critical.
0.
Woo! Okay, Mark.
Ah. So you, Rachel, just to clarify, you haven't done a personal trainer qualification. Do you have like a level 2 gym instructor?
Yeah, so I did my
ETM.
ETM was my thing. I did a level 2 gym instructor, and then I've had a real weird journey of training, and predominantly my background is strength training, coaching, biomechanics and movement, obviously. But aside from that, it's the teaching, counselling, trained counsellor, and the care industry with elderly and disabled was where I kind of started for 10 years. Whilst I was doing my little level 2s and manual therapy. I'm a manual therapist as well, so.
Cool. All good. All right, into round 2, and this is kind of a little bit more industry based rather than your background. You all good to go? Josh, you on a timer?
Yep. Ready.
Rachel, question 1. Name the most underrated person, product, or thing in the industry.
Oh my gosh. Underrated person, product, or thing. Education. I mean, there's no one product or thing, I think, that I would say. I think there's loads of fantastic stuff out there, but I think investing in education is it's underrated. Good education.
I will accept your answer. Now, please tell me the most overrated person, product, or thing in the industry.
I didn't know this was a test. Overrated is, I nearly said online. Online services, but that's a real faux pas right now, isn't it?
Oh no, we have to accept your first answer.
Okay.
What book should all personal trainers read?
Oh God, loads. Michael E. Gerber, Laura Mosley, Pain Science. I've got loads of them.
That'll do. Foam rolling, yes or no?
Yes, why not?
Question 5 won't be relevant because you're not a PT. Which common fitness myth do you wish you could debunk forever?
Stretching.
Ooh. What is the best piece of work-related advice you've ever been given?
It's a small world.
Who would be the ultimate fitness industry podcast guest? I've started, so I'll finish.
Laura Mosley, I think, but whether you get him or not, he's in New Zealand, so.
Yeah, probably not.
No,
and finally, even though we're out of time, doesn't matter, it's my game, my rules. What are your favourite 3 exercises, please, Rachel?
Oh, squat. Number 1, squat, Turkish and running.
Ooh, nice. See what you've done there. Cool.
Yes.
All good. Last round is personal. You're doing all right so far.
Okay.
This is the best round, clearly. You know.
Yeah, for you guys, obviously.
This is what it is. Okay, Mark, you ready with the timer?
Yes, mate. I've got it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Cats or dogs?
Dogs. Of course.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, Pudding, my lame cat, sorry.
Favourite city that you visited?
Tokyo.
If you could attend any concert, who would be playing?
Oh, no idea. I'm Tony Robbins. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say it.
Yeah.
What was the last TV series that you watched or streamed an episode of?
Sense8, Netflix.
If you could choose anyone to play you in a movie about your life, who would it be?
Some comedian. I've no idea.
Tea or coffee, and how'd you take it?
Neither.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you rather go back in time to speak to your ancestors or forward in time to speak to your descendants?
Forwards, definitely.
Would you rather shag a goat and nobody will ever know, or not shag the goat but everyone thinks that you did?
Not shag a goat, seriously.
No one said yes. Name one thing that's still on your bucket list.
Emigrate.
Nice. Okay, that's it.
Emigrate to where?
Somewhere hot. All year. Probably the Canary Islands.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
That's the 20
days. Yeah, you are now officially, technically the 4th member of the 27 Club,
27.
along with me, Josh, and James. First lady, first female member. Happy days.
Can I get some t-shirts? I think I should get some t-shirts made.
Yeah, maybe get some t-shirts. Yeah, you can pay for them. Rachel, I did have some loose questions that I was going to ask, but there was a few things that popped up there while we were going through those that I just want to sort of throw in. The myth that you said you wish you could debunk forever, am I correct in thinking that you said stretching?
Yes.
So are we talking there static stretching, and are we talking pre or post, or just tell us what is your beef with stretching?
So I don't have a beef with stretching. So to be technically accurate, because I'm a technician, forgive me, I want to debunk the concepts around stretching being one thing. And so you basically highlighted the point that I want to make to any brand new personal trainers who go through initial training. And if I'm honest, I should look at the latest personal trainer standard and understand what's being taught now about the best intervention for somebody who doesn't move well, to be generic. And it's always been stretching. In group X, you do a 5-minute pulse raiser, and then you do an 8-second sort of stretch on each muscle group, and then you get going again. You do a rewarm, which that's not happening anymore. So I'm not averse to stretching. What I would like to debunk is the concept that stretching is kind of the be all and end all to movement. And I think the industry is catching up on that now. So I have no problem with stretching, but it is definitely not the only intervention. And in a lot of people in my professional experience, it's not actually the best intervention either. So you would have to define which type of stretching for me to make comment on each one. But stretching could just be doing a squat. You're stretching muscles. Yeah. So, you could do a body weight squat and you're stretching your quad, your knee extensors, and etc. So you'd have to be very specific about it for me to get technical. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So let's say if the three of us were here now and we were rewriting a level 3 PT qualification, we were putting it together, regardless of what's happened in the past or what some providers still teach. Some may be good, some may be bad, we don't know. What bullet points would you be putting in there? And if it helps, you can go through static stretching, dynamic stretching, assisted stretching, or anything else that might be common, in terms of what bullet points would be important to cover, when it should be used, when it shouldn't be used, what purpose might it serve, etc.
I think what I'd like to see is almost like a list of interventions in order of contraindication or methodology, and I'm aware some would be grouped together. In terms of, people don't think of stretching as a high risk technique, and yet it can compound issues. And what I don't mean you stretch and you get injured. What I mean is it can actually enhance an intrinsic problem that is compounded by the act of stretching a muscle. So I would want to see it almost like a list of interventions, and all the ones you've just explained, with the research, obviously, for each one. And we know research is kind of there's research for and against probably all the examples, but also completely different interventions like METs. I know that I think PNF is still taught, isn't it, Josh? Yeah. In personal training courses, which is the concept that is the opposite to stretching, but for the same result or a similar result. So stretching is elongating the muscle, getting the origin and insertion away from each other, whereas an MET or a PNF, muscle energy technique, is bringing the muscle and closer together to affect the muscle fibers. So it's understanding differences and when you would use different ones in order of risk, maybe. Is that what you wanted to hear?
Yeah, it doesn't. I have no idea what I want to hear. I just I like hearing you talk about stuff, and it's just interesting to hear. I mean, I would be interested in looking at what each individual education provider currently delivers, and what changes they've made in, say, the last 5 years, but then to look at, well, what changes should or could be made in the next 3 to 5 years, because it's not a difficult thing to make changes. It's just knowing for that part of the industry, there's almost this sort of notion that you need to get people a certificate in their hand so they can go and do the job, and you need to give them as much information as possible to try and get them to succeed, but you have very restricted amount of time in which to deliver it in. So sort of like, what is the low-hanging fruit? What do we give them now? and what then needs to be added on in future as that person sort of starts to find their feet. And it's impossible to have a perfect solution. But stuff like this, an area like this, would be an interesting one that I think could quite easily be revolutionized and would improve the quality of the PT that comes out the other end.
I agree, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with one of the biggest problems with the personal training industry is those coming in don't understand the industry. Generally, they don't understand the qualification. So they go for, why would they pay £3,000 when they can get one for 500 quid? Yeah, you would. If you're shopping around, there's all these personal training qualifications. You go, well, I use the gym, I know a little bit, I'll do the 500 quid one.
How hard can it be just to lift some weights up?
And what they don't realise is the education providers who are making it cheap as chips, you know, all online, minimal contact, they're losing a lot of that essence. And so you will get what you pay for. The guys who go through the training, they then get in the industry and they go, actually, what I did was a pretty shit qualification. I need to do more. You know, unless they've been educated by others in advance of investing in a PT course. So I think it's difficult because the audience we're talking to here with this podcast are generally already PTs. So they get it. They've either invested £3,000 or they've done the cheap version and now they're trying to catch up with a load of CPDs. The market that we're really talking about is how, when they come in, do we actually set them up right in the very beginning, potentially, with a decent qualification? And I guess that's down to SIMSPA and the committees that sit around the table and make decisions about what goes into the qualifications on a compulsory basis. And that's what I'm interested in, is right at the beginning. For a lot of the listeners listening into this who are already qualified, it's a catch-up process. Potentially, it's a bit of a catch-up.
And so even if you put together like a CPD course on stretching, it's probably not sexy enough to get many people interested enough to go back and learn something that might benefit them, is it?
Yeah, they know about stretching. And I think this is one of the hardest things for any company, and the PTs will know this as well with their own businesses online. How the hell do you stand out? How do you grab attention and engage so you can then share this really good information when you're competing with, you know, the controversy and like you say, trying to be sexy to grab attention, and for them to realise that the stretching they've been taught isn't all the options in the stretching kind of bracket of techniques.
Yeah. So there's one more thing that popped up that I want to touch on, and then I'll hand you over to Josh for a more structured question. And you've mentioned online delivery or coaching a couple of times. And now to play devil's advocate, I have been anti-online for years. Like I'm very, very, very strongly against it, because I always believed that face-to-face was unbeatable. And I still do think that. However, with what we've gone through in the last 6 months, I've adapted and delivered some stuff online, both education and coaching. And although it's not as good, it can be done in a way that is not quite as bad as it used to be, if that makes sense. So what's your stance on online coaching or online education, and how could it be improved, and what are the pros and cons, basically?
Yeah, I'll do the two separately. So I'll do education first, because that's kind of more where I'm talking to the guys who's listening. Education has been proven in research to be most effective with both online and face-to-face learning. I think in the industry that we're in, where you're learning physical, practical skills to apply to hundreds of designs of bodies and geometry and movement capacity, you really need to be in a classroom for at least a portion of it. So I'm actually a fan of this online. I'm with you. I've adapted. James last podcast was talking about, I loved his analogy of evolution, and we have to start fitting the environment, and we do, because we have a duty of care to help people move better with less pain, lose weight, and stay healthy. So I'm not against online. However, there is an innate human need for physical interaction. There's a chemistry that results. And also one of my two passions, which is biomechanics and movement, and then education experiences, you cannot give the same experience online as you can in a classroom. You can experience good education online, but you cannot have the same chemistry of a group of people in one room, going through movements, analysing them, discussing them real time, with real questions, with laughter, with emotion, with seriousness, and maybe sharing things that are relatively intimate. So the evidence is for both. And what this current situation has done for me has, like you probably, Mark, it's nudged me into an area I'm not comfortable with, and I'm getting more comfortable with. So education-wise, I think a 50-50 or whatever percentage of each, I think is a no-brainer. Getting the theory online allows my learners now to come into the classroom mentally prepared. They're actually now in the classroom at a better place when they come in than they used to be coming in cold, if you like. So the online education is helping me help them have a better experience when we do get in the classroom. So I'm a fan in that aspect. When it comes to personal training online, just to highlight everything I'm going to say with the caveat, we have a duty of care. We have to keep helping. And if that's online, then do it online. I'm not saying don't coach online. I've gained clients and worked with clients purely online over COVID. People I've never met in person. We've helped reduce their back pain. We've helped them stay motivated. They've been able to keep working, both athlete and regular sort of desk workers. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think there is, when evaluating movement on a camera, the biggest challenge isn't your skill, it's the client's skill or technology for you to be able to, you can't move around them and look where their knees are. You have to say, stand up, turn, squat. So it's a very tricky process of helping the client perform in a way online that would take seconds for you to walk around them in a gym environment or if you're face to face. So I think we've got to be very aware of what we don't know when we're just online, what we don't sense, what we don't feel. We can't feel the temperature. We don't get that chemistry response. You know that when you've had a PT client and you're with them and you just know something's not right, they're not telling you something. And I'm not sure you can get that online. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be online. We absolutely should, because there's a lot of people getting uncomfortable, overweight, having mental health issues that need whatever we can give them. But I think we've got to be very careful about just thinking we can do it all online, because beyond this whole situation, whenever that is, and I think it's a while away, we're going to be desperate for human contact and interaction. I perceive we're all going to be desperate for. I cannot wait for group exercise. I know we can do it right now, but it isn't the same. You can't move that much. You can't shout, you can't sing, you can't sweat or breathe, for God's sake. So it's lost some of that, the joy. And so it's just being aware, this is for now, and how do we evolve and then move forwards? Because I just think we've been nudged forwards 10 years, technically. I think this would have happened anyway. But being careful to not sit back on our laurels and think, I'm just going to go online. It's much easier and cheaper, because it loses the essence of what it is, really. Doesn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And sort of the reason for me asking the question and to hear you elaborate on it in that manner was to maybe to put people at ease who there might be some people listening to this who don't want to work online, but they might feel like they're being pressured to do all of their work online, and you don't have to. Likewise, there might be people doing all of their work online who might be pressured to do work face to face, which obviously at the minute is limited. And the point I just hope that comes across is that it doesn't have to be either way. There's something magical about teaching and coaching somebody in person that cannot be replicated online, but you can still deliver a bloody good course and a bloody good PT session over Zoom. if you have the skills to still make it a bloody good session. So sort of, as always with most of the stuff we discuss, there's very seldom is there a right way and a wrong way, and you're either on one side of the fence or the other. So as long as that comes across that way, which I think it does, and it's nice to hear that we're on the same page, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, totally. And I think James may have mentioned it last time as well, is what I worry about are the brand new PT learners coming through, or qualified PTs who are just thinking they can just go straight online, stay online, have a whole business online. And that concerns me, because you can't learn about, I don't fit, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm always happy to be challenged, but I think they should be careful to have some degree of experience and practice in person as and when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I mentioned that to James on the last podcast, just to clarify what he was saying, and I'm pretty sure we were both sort of saying something along the lines of, when you're new to the industry and you're finding your feet, you're in the trenches, you've got no choice, but you have to deliver stuff in person, and then you almost earn the right over months, years, or decades. You earn the right to be able to transfer those skills online, but you have to develop them in person first of all. Of course, there will always be somebody who's never delivered a session face to face and they've got a thriving business. But I just think that there will be the exception, not the rule. For the most part, developing those personal skills and the coaching skills, just recognizing somebody's movement, or if something needs to be adapted in their technique or something, that is the better to be learned face to face. And then when you're very, very good at it face to face, then it becomes a lot easier to transfer to doing stuff online.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Cool. Right, well, I'm done then. I'm going. Josh, to you.
My first question, really, Rachel, goes back to one of the first things we spoke about, which is your journey so far. So could you kind of break down how you got into the industry and your first kind of steps?
Well, I don't want to give my secrets away. I'm 51 this year, and I've written a diary every day since the age of 7. And there's almost like phases, like eras that you go through. It's not exactly decades, but if I went in sort of decades, I spent my childhood being told I was not academic, which is why I feel that Mark and I really resonate with each other in terms of we're quite open about our lack of academia.
The only difference is I've been told that throughout my adulthood as well.
But when I was a kid, what I heard was, you're not bright, you're not intelligent. That's not what was said, but hearing you're not academic, I went through sort of the arts, drama, ceramics, that kind of thing, came out of school, no idea what I wanted to do. But from 16, I've been using gyms. There was a little gym in Loughborough called Interim. I used to go with my mum and dad. And I remember when I was going there, the gym owner said, do you want to compete? And I was like, I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And over the next sort of decade or so, I flitted around the care industry. It was kind of like, I cared about people, and my mum was working with disabled kids, and it just was a natural progression. So I did sort of counselling, care work, elderly, disabled, and I actually loved it. I just didn't feel mentally stretched. And this is me looking back. So at the time, it was just, I was plodding along. And I literally had a phone call one night in, I was 21, way back in 91, is that? Something like that. And a mate rang me and said, I'm in Greece, a girl's broke her leg, do you want to come out and join this dance troupe? I'd never been professionally trained. I did a bit of ballroom and Latin American and disco as a kid. And I was like, I'll have a go. And so within 2 days, I was on a flight to Greece, landed in Crete, thinking, shit, what have I done? Expecting all these 6-foot leggy blondes with like legs up to their armpits. And I walked in and it was like, oh, okay. Like a room like this with about 6 beds in it and all these girls sat there. Like, So I learned a dance a night, and I went out on a 3-month contract, and I came back 6 years later, having travelled around Tokyo, Hong Kong, Greece. I obviously popped back in between times, but generally I was away working as a cabaret dancer all over the world, you know, Asia and Europe, and had a very lucky break because I wasn't actually that good. So I just stuck my hand up to everything. I'll go. And then when I got back in '96, I went back into care work for another 10 years, and I got 2 private jobs with a disabled lady with some young babies, and with an autistic lad who now lives in Sunderland, and we're now friends, you know, have been ever since. But I worked with them for 10 years, and during that 10-year period, I was going to the gym, I was collecting certificates, and I started to really get enjoyment out of that side of work, if you like. I was doing classes, and I actually met Martin Haynes, who's the founder of the program that I teach. He did all the research. He was a member of the gym that I was teaching at, and he approached me in 2006 and said, I've done a bit of research, it's quite cool, do you fancy joining me and evolving it into education? Yeah, I'll do that, like, as I always did. And I would spend time in rooms with him. There was him, he was a chartered physio, Nigel Morgan, Ross Shuttleworth, a physio and a sports therapist. I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And they were talking about this biomechanics and movement and muscle energy. I didn't know, and I would just sit there like he'd turn to me and he'd say, what do you think, Rach? And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I had no idea what he'd just asked me. I genuinely had no clue, but I loved it. And I just thought, I've got to learn because this guy believes in me. And I remember just one time as our relationship evolved, I came off from teaching and he was sat there like smiling like this. So what are you smiling at? He says, you're a level 2 gym instructor and you've just been teaching biomechanics to physios. And I was like, oh yeah, haven't I? So it was over since 2006. He and I obviously evolved the education, and I became more and more interested in education, having had relatively poor experience. I found myself being a non-academic, teaching biomechanics to physios globally, so internationally. So I just used to stick my hand, honestly, I just used to stick my hand up to everything and say, I'll go, yeah, I'll do it. But that was kind of my journey.
That's that's something that we've talked about in one of the pilot episodes, I think, when it was just me and Josh chatting to each other, because that's something that I talk about a lot, is just say yes to everything in the early days, because you have to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be everywhere all the time, and those opportunities are far more likely to happen if you're saying yes to everything, rather than if you're picking and choosing because, oh no, I don't work weekends or evenings or Wednesdays or whatever it is, whatever restrictions you're putting on it. And it's incredible the amount of similarities then between my career and your career, the things that have happened when you haven't deserved them, you haven't earned them, and you're nowhere near good enough to be doing them. But you said yes when other people didn't, and then you learn from people around you and you get on. So at that stage then, when you met Martin and you're chatting about the education element of his research, you didn't even have any education background in terms of delivery of education.
Now then, did I? I don't think, no, I didn't at that point. I knew I was a teacher from my classes, because all Group X instructors listening to this will know you don't just go in and teach, same as PT, same as you guys. You don't just go in and teach. You've got the before the class and the after the class, and then the messages, and then, oh, you've changed my life, and all the other stuff. And you realise how impactful your responsibility is when you're standing in front of a group of people who are doing what you've told them, or they're behaving in a certain way based on what you're preaching or teaching or whatever it is. So I felt like I'd always been a teacher in some form, not necessarily qualified, but yeah, I was very... was I inexperienced? I was ill-qualified. I wasn't qualified at all.
Join the club.
But you're right. I think what's important just to put with that is, I don't think people should be putting their hand up to things they don't love. I found something that made me buzz, and I just wanted to be around people that I really enjoyed the company of, or that I was learning, and I just wanted to be there. It's got to be something you enjoy, or there's no point. So if you're doing personal training for the money, you're in the wrong job. You know, you've got to do something because you love it, whatever it is. You've got to really enjoy it, and then it's easy to say yes.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. One more little thing that popped up from your little sort of history bit there was the early amount of time early on that you spent working in counselling and the like care, the care industry, as it were. How important do you think those skills were to transfer into what you do now? How much of an influence did that have?
Huge. It was probably a big reason for doing what I do. I've always been fascinated with movement. Dad was a rugby player and an athlete. My mum was a dance teacher, contemporary dance. So I've always had that influence. I've ran with my dad for 30 years, half marathon distance. So movement and physicality has always been a thing. The fascination of disability, I think, pushed me into regular movements. I say regular movement, and obviously normal movement doesn't really exist per se, but seeing disability and then looking at people moving in classes, there was this kind of like, still this kind of geeky nerdiness about understanding movement. So, or lack of movement in those in wheelchairs and understanding that. But the counselling qualification I did is probably the most profound qualification I did, because while I've never used particularly the certificate per se, the skill of listening, I mean, if anything is underrated, that is. So if anyone listening is wondering what CPD to do next, ring your local college and just sit on a little 10-week counselling introduction course. And I think something like that is invaluable. The ability to listen and hear is what a PT does. That's exactly what we should be doing anyway.
That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say, because the point I was trying to get at was I come across quite often people who come into this industry later in life and they're transferring from another industry, and they often will sort of look down on themselves to sort of think that they're not well enough suited to the role. And the point I always try to get across to them is that you can teach any monkey how to tell someone to do 10 squats and then 10 bent over rows and 10 rainbow twists. That's not difficult. The difficult thing is creating a relationship and a bond with the client so that they know, like, and trust you enough to open up about things, to really delve into what is really wrong. Why are they really coming here? What do they really need help with? And there's so much stuff from the years up that kind of comes into our job remit a little bit now, although we're not qualified counsellors or psychotherapists, but there's some definite transferable skills there that I think anyone who's worked in another industry will often have very useful transferable skills into this one. And then just the specific fitness element is just a cherry on the top.
Do you know what? Anybody listens to this, and nobody gets a PT to lose weight.
No.
Nobody gets a PT to gain muscle, because the information's out there. Like, losing weight is easy. It's two numbers, calories in, calories out. And sorry, nutritionist, I'm not a nutritionist. But there's a simplistic sort of way of looking at what clients come to us for. And it can all be found on the internet. Yeah, you can go on the internet. What a client is looking for is engagement, and then simple systems that a PT can then create to enable them to lose weight easier or quicker or safer. And so every PT client, every single one, I think, let me just think for a minute, every single PT client requirement is about confidence. Every single one. Confidence to lose weight, or to lose weight for more confidence. Confidence to gain muscle or look good in the gym, or to build up for a bodybuilding competition. Confidence to run a marathon without collapsing halfway. It's all about confidence. And that's an emotion that they're after, rather than the actual task at hand. Obviously, the task results in the confidence. But when you break it all down, all clients want is confidence. And that's down to the engagement of the PT and as you say, the interaction and understanding their triggers, their motivators, or what demotivates them or triggers them off the route that they should be taking.
Nice.
Cool.
My next question is kind of linked, but not really. Talking about the route that you've taken and everything and going back to your journey, we've obviously known each other for a few years.
Yep.
And I was just interested to know kind of the evolution of biomechanics education as a business. Like, how did it start out for you as a business? How did you get involved and where did it begin and what's the track been so far?
Yeah, probably it started from one of the most painful experiences I've had in my 51 years. And so Biomechanics Education started in 2013, so about 7 years ago, after the previous business that I was a director of literally, well, it didn't fail. We chose to dissolve the company because we knew if we didn't, we would be stepping in on hot water. So we actually chose to go into huge debt, potentially lose our houses to look after our learners. So the evolution of Biomechanics Education was from two previous companies. Obviously, Martin was the founder of the research, and together he and I created what was known as Mobilist Performance in 2006 to 2009. And we were backed by a large a company called Mobilist Healthcare, who were products and first aid type stuff, £35 million company. And then in 2009, they were bought by an American organisation. So we chose to step away and stand alone. So they basically invested in us. We were the education section of their company. So we stepped away and we created intelligent training systems from 2009 to 2013. And intelligent training systems was, if you like, all our mistakes. We made all our mistakes. We didn't know. We were practitioners. We weren't technicians. We weren't business minded. We had almost too fast growth and demand that we were like struggling to deal with it all and manage it all. And so by 2013, we recognized actually we just need to stop and start again. And we weren't always recognized for what we did, because we did software, consultancy, education, innovation, product design, and it was all under this one roof. And a lot of people thought we were an IT company. So we made the painful decision to close that company down and just step away. And at the point we closed it down, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was losing my house. I was in tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt to the banks. So it was extremely painful. But one of my personality traits is I go in my cave. I'm slightly alpha like that. I go in my cave. You know, I spent a couple of weeks thinking about it, and I went, I love the education. I want to do the education. I went back to Martin and I said, I want to do the education. And he said, great, I don't. So we signed over the intellectual property rights to me. And he's gone on to do innovation and product design and software. And so we kind of split and evolved. Mike Rice is doing the movement therapy clinics and education, and Anthony Fletcher's down in London with Equinox. So while it was that was when it all formulated. What I then had in my scope was everything I knew I did not want to do moving forwards. I knew the mistakes we made. I knew what I needed to do. I say that now. At the time, I didn't have a clue. And I spent literally 2 years immersed in every business book, on courses, in reading, podcasts, you know, Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, Paul Moore, you know, all the kind of industry people, non-industry people, Michael E. Gerber, Brian Tracy, Russell Brunson, all these guys, Chris Cardell, just tell me, teach me. And I didn't spend any money at all. I just took all the free stuff for 2 years, immersed myself in it. What they told me to do, I did it. I took the action. And very quickly, I was able to create a business that was paying me. I had no loans. I had no investors. I'd not borrowed any money. There was no overdrafts, still no overdrafts, still no loans. And I built the company literally from pure graft and having the luxury of all the failures of previous companies. And that it's just a key point to say to people that particularly right now is a really painful period for a lot of people, but trying to see the painful time as an opportunity to learn technology, how to be online, that you can actually work in Tesco's to create a bit of extra cash, whatever it is. I think painful times I almost weirdly relish a little bit now because I know I'm going to grow at some point, I'm going to see a lesson. And so I learned my most painful lesson, and that enabled me to create Biomechanics Education as is.
Wow, that's awesome. So with your kind of all the education and stuff you've done with Biomechanics Education, so that part of your journey, do you have any particular kind of investments, be it time, courses, mentors, that stand out as maybe like your top 1 to 3 investments?
The Michael E. Gerber E-Myth Revisited audiobook, which was the blueprint that I used, and I've listened to it 4 times in the last 7 years, and the last 2 times I heard it differently because I'm in a different place. So I went back to the blueprint, what's your primary aim, what's your strategic objective, I've got my whiteboard out, and I do that on a regular basis now, and I keep going back to it, because when you formulate a plan, you don't have to stick to it. And what I mean by that is the plan can change. So have a plan, at least have one, work with that, and then it can change. So Michael E. Gerber, Tony Robbins, the Unleash the Power Within, I did a few years back, and I'm actually doing it again. I was supposed to do it in March, and it's got delayed till next year. So I'm doing that again. Very difficult to describe. I spoke to Ben Coomber about it and Chris Wright, who both done it, and they both said, just go with it. If I explain it to you, it sounds like weird, but if you just go. And I went and I got it when I realised, well, I went on my own with 11,000 other people, of course, and, you know, hugging and high-fiving old blokes in tank tops and, you know, all sorts of weird people. It was brilliant. I loved it for the 4 days. So those are 2 that really stand out, I think.
Nice. So obviously you said your previous business evolved into what is now Biomechanics Education. Obviously you mentioned that there were a lot of failures there that you learned from. Do you have any that you, or any actions or anything that you actually regret that you would change?
In the business?
Yeah, let's go business.
No, because everything that's ever gone wrong has resulted in a lesson, and I'm automatically programmed to do that. I've been virtually single all my adult life. I'm married now. I've been happily with my partner for 4 years, but prior to that, I was very independent, very much on my own, and okay with that. So I kind of learnt this resilience of, I bought my own house with my own money, you know, all that kind of, that's how I'd always sort of been. My parents brought me up to be very positive about situations. My counselling training taught me about the circle of care, the circle of control, and the things you care about, you cannot control, you know, lose them out of your radar. Don't worry about them. You cannot control the pandemic. What you can control, focus on that, keep your attention positive and proactive. And that's not to say you've got to be fake, you know, going, yeah, I'm fine, when you're not and you feel like crap. But I don't regret anything. I might regret saying that one day. Maybe there's something.
To be honest, that's I've done hundreds of hours of interviews throughout the past 4 or 5 years, and I ask that question a lot because I think that's really interesting for a lot of people to hear, is that most of the interviewees have a very, very similar answer, that it's, I don't regret anything because I've learned from everything. And I think if you've got that awareness to learn from those problems, those mistakes, those troubling times, whatever, then you're not going to regret anything because it all happens for a reason, really. So
stuff I've regretted at the time, and then with hindsight, I've gone, no, actually, that was quite a good thing to happen, you know. So
I've definitely.
From my perspective, the important message here is in the chaotic world that we currently live in, where probably the most popular occupation, if you went and interviewed a group of primary school children, they either want to be YouTubers, influencers, or gamers. Like, no one wants to be a fireman or a doctor anymore, or anything like that. And in that world where you've got now people that have grown up influenced by bullshit, by fake things that you can see on social media as one platform, I think it's quite important to hear people who are successful in their own niche talk about how actually it hasn't been smooth. There've been all of these monumental fuck ups. And when I got to the first fuck up, rather than leaving and doing something else, I just kind of took a step back, had a bit of a think, trusted myself to be able to sidestep the obstacle, and then I went 3 or 4 steps further down the line, and there's this kind of like never-ending sort of perpetual few steps forwards, and of course we're going to get steps backwards, but this is especially poignant at the minute where people are going to have had 50, 90, 100% of their business just disappear in the course of a few weeks. And it would be very easy to then go, oh, well, I'm a fucking shit PT because I've just lost all my business. Well, actually, can you just tear it all up and start again? Because there will be a way of getting some shining lights out of the darkness.
Yeah, always. And I think it comes back to, as long as you're doing what you love, you know, in my head, I can't imagine why anybody would want to be a PT unless they love it. I just can't, because it's such a tough industry. What's happening right now is not going in our favour in terms of, you know, what we do. And yet we should be on the front line, helping people move better, helping people feel better physically, mentally, you know. And so I think anybody out there listening who's thinking of becoming a PT, make sure it's your passion. Anybody who's already a PT, think about what PT means to you. What does being a trainer or a coach mean to you? And then just do that. Don't feel like you should be like the other PTs. You know, you don't have to wear hot pants and do booty shots, or, you know, you don't have to present yourself in ways that other PTs do. You can be a personal trainer within a niche that really like makes you feel good. That's why we do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at 80 to 90% of all PTs fail within 12 to 18 months, that is the best reason there is to do the opposite of what you see most PTs doing, because most of them leave the industry very, very quickly. And if they hang around any longer, they don't earn a lot of money. So don't be afraid to do the opposite of what you see most people doing, because chances are it's probably going to put you in a better stead than if you copy people.
Yeah, and I think James hit the nail on the head last time as well. And he was saying about, you know, you come out of PT school and you go, right, well, what do I charge? You know, what do I do? Where do I begin? And I think if you're doing particularly short, quick, cheap PT courses, that's where you lose the essence of the ones that are more expensive, where they, is it compulsory now to do a business module? Is it compulsory again? Because I think that's a big part that PTs forget, is 80% of your PT business is business, you know, or whatever. 20% is actually working with a client. Because if you haven't got a client, you've got nobody to train. So you have to understand sales and marketing and accounting and finance and branding and language and now technology and Instagram and social media for your demographic to then get that 20% base of clients within your business. So yeah, I think it's tough at the beginning. So listen to these guys.
Fucking hell, don't listen to us. We're a pair of idiots. Listen to us and then do the opposite of what we say.
Yeah, don't do what we do.
No, definitely. Rachel, I'm going to go now a little bit more into the sort of the specifics of what you do, how you do it, why you do it, etc. So we've established that you run, you deliver a lot of education under the banner of Biomechanics Education. For those that don't know, do you focus exclusively on intrinsic biomechanics, or is that just like a big part of what you do? And the follow-on question is, what the hell is intrinsic biomechanics, and how does it differ from biomechanics?
Okay.
Asking for a friend.
I'm glad you've asked that. So no, we don't only focus on intrinsic biomechanics, but what we're trying to help movement professionals understand is the difference between what we classify as extrinsic biomechanics and intrinsic biomechanics. Predominantly, biomechanics is seen as this extrinsic version, and I've actually just created a video, so I'll send you this as well, Josh, for your page. But basically, biomechanics is human movement. That's all it is. And there's a spectrum of it's human movement right up to the other end, which is anybody who's done a sports science degree and worked with isokinetic machines, forces, vectors, first, second, third class levers, very complicated, expensive equipment. Yeah, so there's that spectrum. And all of this is extrinsic. And that is how biomechanics as a science is perceived. So the simple end is what we're talking about as a trainer or a coach. You get a client to do a squat and they twist or the knee caves in, and you say, right, Barry, keep your knee out, keep your back up straight, and you observe their extrinsic biomechanics, you verbally cue them and improve it with visual and verbal cues. So that's extrinsic biomechanics. Mm-hmm. The problem is when that doesn't work. The trainer or the coach is thinking, is it me? Is it something I'm missing? They're looking at the client going, which muscle is it? They're trying to work it out, thinking, I clearly don't know enough. And what can happen is Barry could have been sitting at his desk all day and his intrinsic biomechanics have adapted. So his intrinsic biomechanics are his three subsystems. So the myofascial, the skeletal, and the neural subsystems, which you cannot see. But they will impact on when he's squatting as to whether his knee caves in or not. So if he's been sat on his bum with his wallet in his back pocket, he could now have an adaptation in the hip muscles that mean that he's kind of got up and he's a little bit wonky or a bit off, and the muscles have adapted a little bit and they need attention. Yeah. And so when he comes in and does the squat and the client, the PT says to him, keep your knee in line, and he says, I can't, it just won't go. And that's often an indicator that it's not their technique, and you can tell him as many times as you like to keep his knee out. If he can't do it and you're trying to force it out, you could actually break him because his body's naturally saying, you know, you're not in the right position, I've got to bend the knee in or you're going to hurt your back. So they're inextricably linked, obviously, but without understanding the intrinsic biomechanics and how to understand what is good intrinsic biomechanics, how to assess that and then benchmark it and then monitor it, and then interventions like the ones we talked about earlier to then put into place and then remeasure, then we could be trying to coach technique that isn't a technique issue. So that's what we do, is we demystify human movement down to those intrinsic subsystems. And it feels very complex because probably all PTs, the ones who don't are usually the ones who know the least, but all the PTs are usually lacking confidence about their anatomy knowledge.
Yeah.
Everybody feels like they should know more. And yet actually that's probably not the case. I've been in a cadaver lab with a medical technician who teaches surgeons, and even when I asked them a question about something, they had to go and have a look in a book. So, you know, nobody should know everything, but we need to know enough to understand what we're seeing in our client's movement as to whether it's technique, extrinsic biomechanics, or whether it's an intrinsic dysfunction that we need to do some kind of intervention prior to them doing a squat and help them move better first.
Wow.
Was that too technical? Was that
No. It's a good answer. Josh, were you going to ask a question on that?
No, I've got some other questions lined up, so feel free.
Rachel, on that note, let's go back a few steps to when me, you and Josh were just sat rewriting a level 3 PT qualification. I know it would be very difficult, but how much of this stuff could be at least addressed at that level, are there any elements that should be included at that level before someone's let loose on a human body? Or is it always going to sort of sit as a CPD, a further extra educational avenue if someone thinks they're interested in that avenue?
I'm really glad you've asked that question. And I am extremely biased and opinionated, obviously. So anybody listening, recognise that. But there is a reason why I am. And that is coming from my background, feeling inept and ill-educated at the beginning of my sort of movement profession. So yes, I do believe it should go in at the beginning. If you compare personal trainers or personal training education to any other human movement practitioner, so let's list physios, osteos, chiros, sports coaches, you go through that list, podiatrists, personal trainers. I'd probably put sports coaches over here as well, actually. Sorry, put them over there. They go and do a degree for 5 years. It costs them 30 odd grand, whatever it is, to get trained. They have to do a couple of years on the NHS. They have to do probation, whatever it is, placements. They have to be registered as an allied professional, etc., etc., etc. GPs, the same. All these bodywork practitioners, and we are actually the front line for the country when it comes to movement issues. So why are we the least educated? Why are we the ones who do a 6-week course and then spend 5 years and 30 grand doing CPDs and other qualifications and then going, oh, I don't know enough, and just having a complete lack of confidence because we're not educated right at the beginning? Now, I'm not saying personal training should become a degree. Maybe it should. If it was in my world, Rachel's world, personal trainers would not get insured at level 3. They would go onto a placement, once qualified at level 3, with a level 4, whatever you want to call it, or a chartered practitioner, which is coming out now. They would go on a placement for a year, 2 years, in a gym, 2,000 members, and they would learn on the job. They would be a number 2, if you like. When I first learned level 2 gym instruction, we were as employable as level 3 PTs, if not more so, because we wiped the sweat off the gym equipment. We just walked the gym floor and looked after the members. Yeah, and that job is now, it doesn't exist anymore. And so I see that, I feel that if a personal trainer was given this pathway, rather than, they go straight out there and they're qualified to work with the human body, or they were given more skills at the beginning, but you can't suddenly create a much bigger qualification that's going to be more expensive like that. It's going to take time. That is one of my my ambitions. That might be a bucket list, to get the biomechanics coaching model within the personal training. I personally believe that would be, biomechanics coaching is personal training. It's the only human body practitioner skill that doesn't have any assessment other than, is it fat calipers, body weight, and blood pressure? Is that it? Sit and reach? Do they still do sit and reach?
There'll be some that probably don't even go that far into detail as well.
And yet we are MSK, musculoskeletal professionals. We are musculoskeletal practitioners. We're teaching movement right at the front end. They see us 3 times a week, 2 times a week in the gym. They see us every day. They only see the other group of practitioners when they've got a problem. Why? It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I'm getting on my high horse because I feel really strongly.
No, do it. It's something I've been talking about for a few years, is sort of almost like an apprenticeship, is sort of pretty much what you're saying, where you've got it might be a 12, 24 month process where you can operate within a facility to this level within maybe 6 weeks. However, then over the rest of the duration, you need to be learning more and more and more about how to do the job from a skilled practitioner who can actually impart some wisdom, not just rob money from you to to do a few Facebook ads.
Yeah, and I think this is down to the gym chains, the big employers of personal well, they don't even employ them anymore, but like the big sort of gym chains, which I think every new PT, you need to work in a chain gym for 1 to 2 years, and this is the reason why. You've got full access to a bunch of people. It's cutthroat, and I think that's a good thing, because you're going to have to fight for attention amongst all those other Pure Gym or Virgin or David Lloyd's PTs to stand out, and I think that's a good thing. But then through that period of time, with full access to loads and loads of people, you develop your skill, you hone your skill. If they're then mentored by a chartered practitioner, PT, or a level 4, or whatever you want to call it, they're going to start to build a business and a skill set that then is appropriate to then be out there on their own and set up their own business. I feel like that.
Yeah, and a lot of those chains as well will have they will have relationships and partnerships with credible education providers, where they can funnel some people into discounted versions of the courses. And if you don't, and if there's people listening to this who operate in the upper echelons of the gym chains, then bloody get in touch with solid education providers and build some relationships, because it's a lot more beneficial for the staff. The better the staff are, the happier the members are, the longer they stay around, the more leads they bring for new members, and you end up making more money. Because let's be honest, it's a numbers game, and we can't tar everybody with the same brush. But a lot of gym chains, it appears that their main priority is money, not the development and health and well-being of their clients. Having worked on the inside of those industries for over a decade, I would go so far as to say the gyms couldn't give 2 fucks whether someone joins as a member and loses weight or hits their goal. All they want is you to pay your money, and can we have your 5 email addresses of your friends? I'm sure there are some more competent gym chains out there that have got slightly different views, but it's a financial game, isn't it? Mostly.
I think it's tricky. I think it's tricky because they're big organisations. So there's not an individual who may be like a frontline passionate individual like us sort of driving it. It is literally from the CEO, there's the hierarchy down through the chains, and I mean, I don't know, but I imagine quite a lot of the management team are not fitness professionals. They're managers, they're sales, they're whatever it is. Some maybe, but I think what's difficult is that it's filtering through. They've got to standardise. They've got to have like this blanket system through all the clubs. But I think it's a shame that they don't seem to employ anymore. And I feel like if the chain gyms employed PTs on an apprenticeship, I mean, I know there was something going on. I don't know if there's an apprenticeship thing still happening, where there was funding or whatever it is, but I heard about something a little while back. But if the gym chains employed PTs to engage members, interact with them, like not just be on the gym floor training someone, to literally go around, talk to people. That's what I spent most of my first 10 years of being a gym instructor doing. And it was great. I knew all the members, I would look after them, I would signpost. I did more than just be a gym instructor. It was like there's a new qualification, there's a health navigator or something in SIMSPA, where you kind of signpost people. So, you need to go and see so-and-so down the road, or you need to go and see so-and-so, or I'll come to my class, or, it's very community-based, very familial. So I think you're right, Mark, there's a loss, maybe there's a bit of a loss of that engagement. And again, right now, that's a big problem, isn't it?
Definitely is. So if, let's say, the end goal would be to have something like that in place, I think maybe a 12 to 24 month duration, whether you call that a degree or whether it's an apprenticeship or what have you. But in the short term, let's say if I was doing some work for an education provider and I was rewriting or I was adding in something to the level 3 qualification, what could I add in, the low hanging fruit, the quick wins, in order to give those PTs at least a taste of biomechanics / intrinsic biomechanics?
It's kind of, when I describe it, movement assessment isn't difficult. You've got the very basic end, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'll give you as a basic nugget. And then you've got the evidence-based end, which is what we teach. Even the evidence-based end is very simple, but we need to teach the science behind it to understand it, to make it evidence-based, because it's very precise. Whereas PTs are already biomechanically assessing clients. But to understand it and use it as a skill, I'm not sure they realise the simplicity of it. So, for example, Dan John talks about, if you're familiar with Dan John, American S&C guy, great book, Intervention. And I'm a fan of him because he simplifies movement analysis. Mm-hmm. Right, okay, Barry, come on in. I'd like you to just get up and down off the floor, please. And watch him get up and down off the floor. Yeah. How does Barry bend over? Has he got much hip flexion? Can you film that with Barry's permission and then see how he does? That's a movement assessment. So that's what I call a subjective movement assessment. How does Barry get up and down off the floor? So when I've worked with the elderly and I've asked them to do that and they look at me in shock horror, my mum was one in her 80s, kept falling over. I said, Mum, you're going to have to show me how you get up and down off the floor. And she looked at me like, oh, I can't do that. And I said, well, what if you fall over and no one's here? You need to get up, so show me what you do. So movement assessment can be a very precise science end, or it can be super simple. You will be doing it anyway, anybody who's listening, or you guys, I'm sure. Somebody comes in, you say, right, let's have a look at you, do a squat. And you just get them to do a body weight squat, go as far as you feel comfortable. If you want to hold on, depending on the client, you adapt it. Can you film that? Can you film that and then say, right, okay, Barry, we're going to work with you over the next week. We're going to see if we can get you more comfortable. And we've got some measurements. You might do a squat, you might do a roll down, you might do a get up and down off the floor. So kind of compound movements, gross movements, a bit like your FMS, which again is a model, a version of subjective assessment, where it's multi-joint movements, overhead squat, lunging. Film them. And then when they come back next week, you've added some intervention. Say, right, Barry, get up and down off the floor. Let's see how you do. And Barry's like, do you know what? That feels a bit easier this week. And you film it, but you film it in the same angle, the same lighting, the same movement, the same, you make sure it's kind of almost like a common benchmark. You always have the camera in the same position. If he's doing a squat, you do one behind. It's like the fat loss image. You get them to stand front shot, in their pants. Why do they always do it in the pants? Anyway. So you do these perverts. You do these photos. Every photo is a benchmark. But walking up and down the stairs, filming your client walking up and down the stairs, filming them get up and down on the floor, filming them squat is relevant. It's specific. Or you might say, show me how you would normally squat, a back squat, a front squat, or whatever it is. Show me what you do, Barry. You show me how you normally, or a goblet, whatever it is, or a lunge. And then you film them doing their interpretation. You say, right, brilliant. We're going to back it up now and improve your ankle mobility, your hip mobility, and then we'll see what happens to that version over time. We'll film you again in a couple of weeks. Movement assessment and analysis isn't complex. The complexity comes from the PT's lack of confidence about what's causing the problem. Mm. Why does his knee cave in? Why is his back buckling? Is it the back? Is it the spine? Is it the shoulder? Is it the knee? Because in a gross movement, it could be any one of those or any combination. And that's where I give that precise science part, is how to identify which bit, where it's actually coming from. But movement assessment in itself is really easy, right?
Definitely. I like that. Mind blown. So kind of tied into that, if you were approached by a personal trainer that said, look, my anatomy knowledge is less than optimal. I haven't studied any anatomy since I did my level 3, 10 years ago. What sort of resources would you recommend for someone that wants to improve their knowledge of anatomy?
Really, really easy. Go back to your level 2 A&P. Go back to level 2. Go back to your anatomical neutral man, where you've got the skeletal movements of abduction, flexion, extension, rotation. Remember the joint actions first, the planes of motion, sagittal, frontal, transverse, and really get confident in that vocabulary first. The hip extensors or hip extension or hip flexion, because you can look at that in your client and it's black and white. They either hip flex or not. And you can look at a movement, you can even look at the squat and you can go, well, the spine's flexing, the left knee's adducting, you know, you can look at the shoulder doesn't abduct, whatever it is, you can make these notes. If you understand those basic movements, fundamentally, they are what I use every day with clients. More than, I don't look at a client and go, is that pectineus? Is that, is there VMO a little? No, it's just not helpful at all. But once you understand movement, you then start to pick up on, well, what are the abductors of the hip? And then you go back to your book again, and maybe your level 3 book, and layer on, well, you've got like, you know, glute med, glute min, primary abductors, where do they go? Well, they go over and under each other. One will rotate one way, one will rotate the other way. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And you can layer that stuff on top. But as I teach on the diploma, I want you to forget the muscles. It doesn't help you in movement analysis. Movement analysis is, do they flex? Do they rotate? Do they extend at the knee, at the pelvis, at the spine? Rather than understanding the muscles won't change what you do with a client when you're looking at the move. At any level. I mean, I'm happy to be challenged on that. And I'm not saying for a minute you shouldn't know your muscles, but I couldn't reel off 600 muscles right now. I've got a good idea of the muscle groups that abduct, flex, extend. But I'm also aware when I've been in a cadaver lab, and I've seen 5, 6 quads. I've seen triple-headed biceps. So it's like, well, you've learned stuff, but actually in that client, they may not have psoas minor. 40% of people don't. Yeah. So the anatomy books only tell you a portion.
That's insane. So, Mark, have you got any other questions related to biomechanics, or can I throw a random one in there?
What's your random one about?
If you had a billboard.
Okay, let me go with posture first. So this is something that popped up in the UKPT's group last week, I think it was, or might have been the start of this week. Typical thing, somebody asks a very polite question and they get a couple of polite answers, and then you get like a pub brawl breaks out because one person thinks this and cannot fathom that anybody else would operate differently, and another person thinks this and wouldn't even consider that there's another option. So my question about posture is, firstly, sort of, what is posture? How much can it be changed? How much can it not be changed? And as a personal trainer, what is our remit? What could or should we be boasting that we can help people with?
Posture, by definition, is a body position. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just a body position. And when you're standing or moving, I'm changing posture constantly because I'm a fidget pants. So my posture is changing all the time. And so what I try and help people do is get down to the technicality. And that's very challenging on social media posts when people are just typing messages out, to have a technical debate. And so posture is basically a position of the body. I think where people are talking about bad and good posture, one of the problems by definition is people think there are bad postures. So for example, if I go like that, that's a bad posture. I'm all right because I can do that again.
Who says?
So, okay. So exactly. So there's an old posture assessment thing where they talked about your bony prominences, it had to be in a certain position. So this whole fallacy of the anterior pelvic tilt, just drop that in there. So, you know, that there is a perfect position for the pelvis to be in. Now, every individual will probably have a good position for their skeletal system that stacks them up nicely. But then the skeletal system is driven by the muscle and neural system and all the ligaments and everything else. But also, if you think about your mood, when my mood changes, I might be more like that. Like, I'm a bit fed up today, so my posture's a bit bad. And then on another day, I'm feeling really good, so my posture looks really good. So I think what we're trying to understand when we use the word posture is what posture is. Is there a bad posture? No. What is the bad posture that people are all talking about? It's the one where people's bodies have adapted to a static position over a period of time that makes them feel potentially uncomfortable. But it's then the interpretation of that bad posture causes pain, because it doesn't. Because I'll do that, that's a bad posture, but I don't feel pain. So I think we've got to really get into the nitty-gritty. Positions are not a problem. Static durations with using the human body in one position for a long time, that's what it doesn't like. It doesn't like to stand for long periods of time or sit in the same position. So being dynamic is what the human body is designed to do. When we're static and we're sitting at a desk, which is the common bad posture thing, the thoracic spine goes into a ligamentous creep, where the ligaments creep in through gravity, and the vertebrae start to almost fix into a thoracic flexion that then becomes difficult to get out of. And then over time, the client gets a pain in their back because this isn't moving. So all the movement's coming from here, so this bit hurts. So I think what we're trying to do is interpret what we see in a client and what that means to the way they feel and the way they move. So being careful about the idea of good and bad posture, because I don't believe there are any, because I can do what would technically be deemed a bad posture and feel okay. There's also little evidence to link bad posture to pain. And so just being careful that you don't assume that that means that's causing the back pain. It might do. So I think going back to the movement assessments, we can use posture. So take a photo, take a photo, take a photo. With the following week, we can use it as a basic benchmark, but we've got to be careful about what we're assuming it might be telling us. That's the key part. You can use posture, definitely, but also remember, posture will change with mood. It doesn't have to change with your biomechanics or your substructures. It can just be like a mood thing. So did I answer the question again? Sorry, I get on one and then I realised that I was asked a question.
No, that's all right. I can't even remember. Was it me that asked the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Like we're rubbish at this. We're making it up as we go along. We don't know. Of course, I'm kidding. No, that was a good answer. It was a good answer. Would the same be true? So everything you've talked about there from a postural perspective, which is a static position that the body is currently in at any moment, would the same then be true of biomechanics and movement? And if I elaborate on that slightly, you tend to get this like idyllic movement pattern or biomechanical like movement that, like, let's say take running, for example, like gait, like this is textbook running movement pattern or whatever you want to call it. This is how everybody should run, where it's nice and straight and linear. There's no wasted effort laterally. However, you can easily find a video of one of the African girls who runs a marathon in about 2 hours, 30 minutes, and her body's like Phoebe from Friends.
Jet2 still medalist from 2012. Yeah, fantastic running style.
So obviously, clearly that's not aiding her performance. So where is the line between this is how you should run? Well, actually, but this person runs like this, and it doesn't cause any problem.
Yeah, again, I'm glad you've asked that. So look at Jet2, look at Michael Johnson, when he sprinted, he had this weird, like, he was extended back. You imagine a runner should be forwards, and yet they're gold medal winners, they were injury free. So when it comes to a client, this is one of the issues when early on in your training, and I teach alignment tests or symmetry tests. So I think we've got to understand exactly what that means. So working towards nice symmetry is like posture. we've got to be careful that it's not going to trump function. So one of the things I teach is alignment and symmetry would never come in front of function, but we can use alignment and symmetry to measure improvements in function. That sounds almost like a contradiction in terms, but what I mean by that is my joint design is actually really poor biomechanically. If you've ever heard of femoral retroversion or anteversion or coxa valga, coxa vera, and if you look at a femur, the femur neck, and then the ball and socket going into the hip, you can have a genetic makeup where your femur neck is rotated one way or the other. So femoral anteversion or retroversion. Coxa valga, coxa vera is the angle that the femur neck sits into the pelvis. And that's going to dictate how much you have the capacity for abduction. So these anomalies are not uncommon. And so understanding that your client's biomechanical setup, you can't see that. So unless you've got the ability to measure these kind of points of resistance, you get trained, as I say, on the Biomechanics Coach program, we teach that type of thing, then it's going to be guesswork. So understanding position and alignment is a benchmark, but we're not trying to make people into perfect symmetrical beings, because good luck with that. It's just, chances are it's not going to happen. But if you can improve their function, their performance, how they feel, how well they move, the quality of their movement, the way they get up and down off the floor, their comfort and how they feel in a squat. Does it matter if the toes point out a little bit? No, let them land where they want to land, but use it as a comparison to the week before and the week before that. But there's always going to be perfect biomechanics for every individual to some degree, but it's going to be based on the geometry, which is really difficult to measure.
Makes a lot of sense.
Would there I'm just trying to think how to phrase it. I remember reading something over the years about pistol squats. So a pistol squat is something that I'm quite comfortable doing. But is it true in your experience that there'll be some people genetically who probably can't do a pistol squat? Is it due to the shape of the ball and the socket joint, which physically won't allow them to get into position? And then you end up then, if you're insisting on performing an exercise because you saw someone at the CrossFit box doing it, you end up jamming a square peg into a round hole when it probably shouldn't.
Yeah, if you imagine again the pelvis, there's a good example for the one you've talked about, and just basically squatting, whether it's a pistol squat or any kind of squat. You can have differences in the depth that the ball and socket sit within each other. So you can have a very deep socket, which means that you're going to have a tendency towards a more stable pelvis. But what that's going to mean is when you squat, your femur is likely to hit and tip the pelvis sooner than someone who has a shallow hip socket depth. The person with the shallow hip socket depth is probably not going to be as stable when they squat, but when they squat down, they have more space to get lower before they tip the pelvis posteriorly. So yeah, there's definitely a genetic makeup that's going to favour certain moves over others, and again down to the sort of angling of the neck of the femur. And this is stuff that you can measure using certain tests, but you would need to learn how to do those.
Wow. It's crazy.
That sort of leads into probably a topic of discussion for another day, between something that I find myself talking about a lot to PTs, between just methods and principles. Whereas if you just copy someone else's methods of training without actually understanding how that applies to your current client at the current time in the current context, then you can end up copying them for the wrong reasons rather than developing your own principles of working.
One of the things I keep saying to people when I'm training them in sort of quite specialist skills, and they're going to start attracting clients with problems and issues because of the nature of the skills I'm teaching them. To every trainer or coach or movement specialist out there who's listening to this, the number one most important deciding factor on what you do with that client is them. Them on that day, right there, that hour, that moment. And again, this is something that I feel like we lose online is, you know, that time when you've written a fantastic program, you're excited to use it, and the client walks in and you think, it's not the day. I think we need to back off, Barry. Today, do you know what, mate? You've had a shit week. Let's do something else. Let's do something a bit easier, or your back's sore, or whatever it is. So no matter what the research says, no matter what I say, no matter what your educator says, you have to put the human in front of you first, rather than saying, Barry, you're going to pistol squat. I'm sure your pelvis is fine. You know, come on, we can do this. It's really cool. I've seen the other guy, which I'm sure people won't say, but you've got to take into account their emotion, the mood that day, and effectively every time they turn up, you should be doing a mini consultation. How are you doing today? How are you feeling? Whether it's on the treadmill in the warm-up or whatever, however your fashion of getting somebody started, there should be that initiation of how is this going to go today? And it could all change in a moment because Barry's dog died or whatever it is, and you think, do you know what? Maybe we should go for a walk and have a chat.
No, definitely. I massively agree with that.
Yeah.
So, Mark, have you got any more?
No, mate, you can do your billboard question now.
It's just a really quick one as well. That's, you know. So, Rachel, obviously, you've got a lot of knowledge regarding business, fitness, biomechanics, anatomy, like the whole, you know, host of topics. But if you could give one piece of advice to the people that are listening out there, or to every personal trainer, if you could proverbially shake the personal training world and give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Keep investing in education. And even if that's just time, there's loads of free education out there right now. I would just soak that up. Get everything you can for free, but recognize when you get to a point where you actually need more knowledge, more skills. And people like us will do free stuff like this to try and help out. That we know, you know, but you need more information. But there's going to come a point where we've got to recognise that our original education is very, very short. We've got to keep upskilling and staying up to date. So invest in education.
Nice. That's quite. So, Mark, have you got any more questions for the interview section?
No, mate. I've got all of my stuff. Just there was a handful of questions that came up on the post. Do you want me to go through them now with Rachel?
I've got them here, so I can do them if you want. I'm easy.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, we've got some die-hard fans of yours in UK PTs.
I paid them all a £5, so maybe look popular. Ask some questions.
So, question number one is from Steffa Hibbard. What inspires your blog posts?
You guys listening.
Oh. And then again from Steffa, what's your favourite movement and why?
Squat. I've read more research papers about the squat than I can shake a stick at. And I feel like it's one of the most fundamental movements that we should be able to do as a human. I don't mean with a bar, I mean just a basic squat.
Nice. And then Andy Davis asks, what's the split in work for you on like an average week between things like training clients, teaching, and any other work you do?
Yeah, I found this an interesting question. People would, I was thinking, I don't know actually. So I'd seen that question, Andy, and I thought, well, I'll write down what do I do? I do creation, management, which includes looking after the learners, practical, which is then working with clients, admin and finance, and then teaching. And I was trying to work out the breakdown. Admin and finance, I either delegate, I've got an accountant and a bookkeeper, but I obviously like to keep on top of that. That's a small portion at the end of a month. Teaching, anywhere between 2, 6, maybe even 8 days in a month, but it's basic. So December, January, I don't really teach much at all. Same around July, August time. So most of my time, I'm not sure I could put percentages on it. I've got about 4 clients right now. So I've got a Paralympian gold medalist who's going to Tokyo next year, hopefully, an open water swimmer, and a couple of bodybuilders who I see online at the minute. And then I manage learners quite a lot and create. So create means social media, workshops, doing things online, speaking to learners, speaking to potential learners is probably quite what I do mostly, I think. But I read and research and try and keep educating myself as well. I have blocks of time in my week. Does that answer your question, Andy? Message me if not.
From my perspective, the interesting thing to hear about a question like that is that you still actually do the job that you're teaching people how to do, if that makes sense. Not to name any names because I can't think of any, but I'm sure there will be some people who operate as educators or business gurus or blah, 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 insert job title here, and they don't actually do the job that they're telling people they can make them better at, if that makes sense.
I think it's super important for educators to keep the hand in. I have to keep my hand in to be up to date, to give anecdotes to my learners about when I had this client. And I deliberately try and take on a variety of clients. So I generally like working with strength athletes. So the bodybuilders are a real buzz at the minute. The Paralympian guy is phenomenal to work with. This guy is proper top level. You know, he was at 2012. He got the gold in the Europeans. He's hopefully going to Tokyo next year. So working with that kind of level, and his team of 8 physio, strength coaches, everything else is fantastic experience for me to then pass on. That actually this is not what it might be. You might think it's really good to work with these guys. It's really challenging because I've got to listen to 8 people's view before I can actually tell him what to do. We've got to kind of pass it backwards and forwards. But I think it's really important that we should keep our hand in.
Definitely. Rachel, if you don't mind me asking, on that note of the Paralympian, what event does he compete in?
High jump.
Okay, what disability does he have?
He's born with a club foot.
Okay.
I don't know how he's classified, the sort of technology, you know, they have like classifications in disability, and it's something about lower limb. Right. And so he has a physio, an osteo, a doctor, because he had an Achilles rupture a couple of years ago as well. So I've been helping him post-rehab. And so his strength coach was kind of like, well, who's this biomechanics coach woman? So pulled me in, which is fine. Because they're all paid for or they're invested in by whoever pays for that. Whereas he was pulling me in himself. He wanted to learn more, and so they were quite interested. And my interest is in getting biomechanics coaches recognised at that level of performance and what we can do. And he's in the best shape he's been in. I'm not saying that's just down to me by any means, but I think we can definitely make a difference.
Is he, so the club foot is in one or the other or both?
One foot. Yeah. So if you watched him, you probably wouldn't even notice. And he's happy for me to. I've shared some of his test images where I've been testing his spine mobility and things like that, and he's happy for me to share it. He spoke at the Kaizen Project last year. Jonathan Broom-Edwards, a great guy, fabulous to work with. But likes gaming, and he's a manual therapist, so he's got that kind of forward flexion part as well, which when you're going into high jump is a problem. So a really interesting character to work with.
Cool.
So another question from UK PTs, again from Steffa Hibbard. If your job gave you a surprise 3-day paid break to rest and recuperate, what would you do with those 3 days?
Oh, I'd go somewhere hot. I would run in the mornings nice and early down the beach and then lie by the pool for the rest of the day.
Wow, that's awesome. So then I have one final question for the interview section. If people want to find out more about yourself or Biomechanics Education, where should they go? Where are you most often found?
Well, the website is www.biomechanicseducation.com. but I post a huge amount on Instagram, Biomechanics_education. Facebook, I've got Rachel Francis Thompson, my personal account, which is still, there's information on there, but also the Biomechanics Education page on Facebook. So Facebook and Insta, whichever are people's favourites on social media, otherwise the website.
Perfect. What I'll do is I'll link those in the show notes so people can find you easily. So, Mark.
Let's masturbate. Rachel, as always, adjudicated anonymously by myself. I've got one in each hand. Tell me which one of my hands you would like me to reveal.
Your ring hand.
My left hand. Masturbate with the left hand. It's like someone else is doing it. And you have the Bosu.
Do you want me to go and get mine out of the shed? Am I for or against?
If you've got one in the shed, then you can go against the Bosu. Unless it's in the shed because you hate it.
No.
Josh, do you want to go for the Bosu, or would you like me to go for the Bosu?
So I did the last one against James Smith, so I think you should have a go this time.
Okay. Right. Am I going first, or is Rachel going first?
We'll let the guest go first.
Let's go first. So, Rachel, you're going to have 60 seconds to give me all of the reasons why the Bosu is the worst thing ever invented. Tongue in cheek, of course. And then I'm going to do the opposite.
Are you ready?
Tell me when.
3, 2, 1, 60 seconds.
The Bosu is the most overrated, expensive piece of tripe equipment that's ever come out in the industry. I cannot believe anybody came up with something so stupid as a half ball, for God's sake. The idea that you can improve your stability by wobbling on a ball. When does anybody ever stand on a bloody half a ball? I mean, seriously. Oh, of course, when they buy a Bosu. Well, they've been absolutely ripped off and shafted by a lump of plastic with a big rubber hump on the top. And you can even get them with little band things that you can pull on, because that's a functional movement, standing on a half a ball, wafting your arms around. They are absolutely a total waste of time. I've even seen them in a gym on the back of a Roman chair when you're doing your leg raises. So you're bouncing off the back there. I mean, what's that all about? Tell me when you functionally hang from something and bounce off the ball. Seriously.
Oh, Rachel. It was all going so smoothly. Everybody was under the impression that you were an intelligent, well-informed guest. And then you come out with a shower of shite like that. And I've just brought myself 15 seconds of waffle eaten into my task to talk about how good the Bosu ball is. The thing about the Bosu ball that you clearly misunderstand is that you can use it both sides up. The clue is in the title. You can have the hard bit on the floor and you can jump up and down on the little domey bit. And when you get bored of that, you can flip it up, have the soft bit on the floor, and you've got a rock hard, wobbly, soft platform. Now, although we might not live on bouncy castles, it is never going to do us any harm to have a little bit of added stability in the crucial joints within our body, such as the ankles, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, etc., etc. So for me, chucking a Bosu ball into your repertoire of training skills would actually be a very, very worthwhile use of your time.
Boom.
I like your expansion on etc., etc., etc. Just to
I couldn't think. I was like, shit, I've used up all the joints. Bollocks. All the key joints.
Right.
And just as a caveat, by the way, I do have a Bosu. But just to layer on top of that, just to try and add in some kind of way of thinking and add a nugget of how I might teach the use of a Bosu. Just remember that if somebody is unstable, the last thing you want to do is destabilize them. So try and get somebody stable on a static surface first, and then things like Bosus or stability balls are good tools for more advanced challenging. So it's not, you don't just whack all the most unstable people onto an unstable surface.
Makes sense. So we've got to move on to the next section now, which is false, false, true. So I believe you've prepared some statements for us, 2 of which are false, 1 is true, and me and Mark need to figure out which is which.
Okay, so we'll just go with the 3, as I said earlier, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
I smoked 20 cigarettes a day for 20 years. I used to work for the Japanese Yakuza Mafia. I won 3 years on the trot, a half marathon, dressed as a turkey.
I really hope that last one's true, but Mark, what are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. 20 fags a day for 20 years. It's a possibility, but I just think the numbers are too perfect there. Like, what if 15 fags for 25 years or something like that, or 25 fags for 10 years? You could have been an ex-smoker, but I just think 20 fags a day for 20 years is a bit too perfect. I quite like the mafia one. I quite like the Japanese mafia. And I don't doubt that you won the half marathon dressed as a turkey 3 years in a row, but I think maybe you might have changed your fancy dress and done it as a chicken one year, a turkey the next, or some, just to mix it up and be different. So I'm going to cast my vote to the Japanese mafia.
As the fake one or the true one?
No, I think that's the true one. Josh?
So, I've obviously known you for a long time, Rachel. I know that you do run. I know that obviously with your father as well, you do a lot of running. But I don't think it's that one. The smoking one sounds right, but I don't think that's accurate either. And I know that you spent a lot of time in Tokyo, and I believe the Yakuza one is actually true.
I can't believe you 2 are guessing. The true one is that I've worked for the mafia.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Yeah. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else happened there. Josh knew that I'd got 2 right in a row, so he just went for the same one as me, so he didn't get too far behind.
Actually, I know more of that story. I know the details.
Oh, have you got inside information?
There you go. So there you go. To be honest, I actually used to smoke 40 fags a day for 20 years. And I've actually
for 40 years then?
No, for 20 years. And I've actually done 4 half marathons, won them dressed as a turkey. Wow. But yeah, you were right. I have worked for the Yakuza.
So put us out of our misery then. Just elaborate on that ever so slightly.
On the Yakuza one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I first went out to Japan, there was a British agent and then a Japanese agent, and the idea is that they would facilitate us going out there, provide costumes and choreography, and they would take a percentage. When I was in Japan, which was 94, 5, 6, it was before the economy crash, and I was earning a shed load of money, and I saw how much we were paying the agents. And so while we were out there, I had some friends who were missing their little fingers, and we were chatting, and they said, we'll manage it over here for you. You can get rid of your British agent, we'll facilitate it. And I said, brilliant. And so for the following few years, we worked for the Yakuza. It always sounds really dodgy, but it was genuine. And they were genuine guys. They were obviously really dangerous, like weird. They had their little fingers in pickles at home, and they came in with big fur coats, and they had a girl on each side who would light the cigarettes. But they were really nice to us. They loved the fact that we were British. So, yeah.
Class story. I like it.
Wow.
Josh, finally, last couple of minutes before we finish up, there was a question popped up in the UK PT group yesterday. While Josh is getting it up, I will, well, take that how you will. While Josh is finding the exact wording of the question, it was something along the lines of PTs being expected to deliver free sessions or elements of free sessions. Was it almost like as a requirement as part of the job?
Yeah, so basically the guy has said, his name's Drew, he said, I'm fed up of people taking advantage of PTs. Let me explain. A PT joins the new gym, and then the manager tells the new PT everyone has to do free PT sessions, like taster sessions, or free consultations, give this for free, that for free, give your life for free. I quoted that there. So what are your thoughts, Rachel, on giving out consultations, taster sessions, freebies, that sort of thing?
There's two ways of looking at it. People should be paying for your time, whatever your time is as a professional. I see that as one avenue to look at it. But in the same breath, we've all been agreeing that certainly in the early days, you've got to put yourself out there, you've got to give stuff away to get stuff back. So I think as long as what you're giving for free, if you are giving something for free, you're very careful of, they don't need to know this, but you're very careful about how much information you give away. I am actually a fan of doing things for free because people need to sort of almost experience it, but then what you give them is one hell of an experience, an engaging experience that gives them a really good feeling. You don't have to give them all the nuggets and everything else because they don't know what more you've got to offer. Those who just take the free stuff, fine, practice it, use it as market research, get their feedback, they owe you that. Maybe make your free sessions come with the agreement that if you do it for free, they would write you a testimonial or they would do a little video for you. So you actually do get something from it and they see some value in that. And then that feeds into the ones who then want to invest. But I think what's difficult is, as a PT, that I hear you, Drew, by the way, that you almost feel like all you're doing is free PT. Don't do free PT. Do a free taster of something that really engages them. Try and get creative with it. What can you give them? And then invite them into your free Facebook group and do some little videos in there or something else. But also make sure they understand what they would get if they invested into you. And that's not necessarily a sales pitch, but an understanding of your, what else you can do. So it's difficult. I hear you, Drew, but I think you've got to do something along those lines, but get your testimonials off them as a payback.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, 10 years ago, I would have been writing that exact same post, sort of like a anti-establishment, anti-management type sort of rant. Hence, I got sacked from everywhere or got offered to be sacked before I quit like a coward. So I feel his pain and I understand the sentiment behind it. Playing devil's advocate, there will be people who do no free, deliver nothing free ever, and they will be very successful. There'll be people who deliver free stuff all the time, and they'll be very successful. There'll be people who never do anything free, and they'll have a shit business. And there'll be people who always do stuff for free, and they'll have a shit business. So everyone's always going to fit into one of those four groups. And just because one person is doing well in one of those groups doesn't mean that all of the people in the other three have to copy them and do the same. If I had my time again, and if I got a job tomorrow in a gym, I would now, two things that I always talk about to new clients when I take them on is confidence and competence, in that I make it crystal clear to them that I don't want to try and get their money off them 3 times a week for the next 15 years. A business coach might tell you that's good business if you can keep someone for that long, because then you don't have to replace them. I do the opposite, and I tell people I want to give them the confidence and the competence for them to be able to come into the gym and be able to train themselves with the knowledge I've given them as quickly as possible, so I can then replace them, because I've always lived in small communities and there's only so many people that I can see at once. So I've developed, actually on the basis of the one-day workshop that I did with Rachel that I hosted last year, I put together a free assessment session that was literally just going through a couple of movements, a couple of photographs. It was done in first gear, and I just showed them a few little bits, did a few measurements, then I gave them the 4-sign test, then went and rechecked it 4 or 5 minutes later, showed them the comparison photographs, and people were like, fuck, nobody's ever given me that level of understanding ever before. And then if you're doing something free that's taking me 20, 30, 40 minutes, and like if I've got that time spare, happy days. I reckon my conversion rate on those was, if it wasn't 100%, it would have been close, 95+% in terms of that person then becoming a paying client. Whether they're giving me 40 quid a month or a couple of £100 a month for a year, that then all of a sudden it was worth my time doing that free half-an-hour session, because it made me a lot of money. But what you don't want is some idiot manager that's taking advantage of your good nature, making you deliver free sessions because they're giving it away. Oh, if you sign up, we'll give you 3 free personal training sessions or something like that. You can turn that into your advantage, as Rachel said. If you then wow the pants off them and show them that you're worth 30, 60, 90 quid a week moving forwards, then you've got a lot of leads there. But I don't want to see anybody working too much for nothing. But there has to be an element of stuff that you'd be well advised to do some stuff for free in the hope that it makes you some money down the line. You agree, Josh?
Yes, generally I agree. I think that I reckon what's happened, looking at I'm just making some assumptions here, is that I think Drew is pissed off because there's a manager that is maybe enforcing his will upon the team, and I think
that manager.
Yeah, fuck that guy. So I think, Drew, what you need to look at is, here you've been given the opportunity, or maybe you've been forced into the opportunity to speak to a lot of people and get yourself in front of a lot of people, and also hone your craft and hone your training, your sales, your consultation skills, your confidence, your rapport building techniques. All of this stuff you can now practice, and you just need to make sure you see this as the opportunity that it is, rather than the forced burden that you've been given. And I think once you change your mindset with that, I think then it becomes a way for you to grow your business rather than a problem to solve.
It can be turned into a massive positive if you allow it to. But on the other hand, don't let someone take advantage of you just because you're good natured. So don't give away everything for free, but use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
That manager won't be working there in about 6 months' time, because he'll get offered a job for £500 a year more selling mobile phones or something like that, and he'll go and work somewhere else. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but what you tend to find with sales managers and sales personnel, they chop and change from one industry to another, because selling something is their job, and you're not going to have to go very long before someone offers someone a mildly better financial package, and they'll go and take it. So fuck them. Just look after yourself and generate lots of leads.
Good time. So I think that's pretty much all we've got for today. I just want to say thank you, Rachel, for your time. It's always amazing to talk to you, and I find your passion and your knowledge it just blows me away every time we speak, and I really appreciate your time.
Brilliant. I'll send you that check afterwards. I just found my latest CPD, and just because I said I always, if I say I'm going to do something, I try and make sure I do it.
You know that was the quick fire round, and we asked you that question nearly 2 hours ago.
But I just want to say, because it was an amazing one, it was Tim Gabbett's Train Smart and Hard Load Management Workshop, which was about load management. And this guy is phenomenal. He's over the other side of the world. And one of my colleagues managed to get him across here, and I did a one-day CPD with him that was mind-blowingly full of great content. So if you go and find Tim Gabbett, he'll share loads of performance data. He does a lot of research as well. So that was my last CPD. Just thought I'd fill that in.
I think he's just released a book, hasn't he, in the last couple of months? I'm sure I've seen that pop up somewhere.
I'll have to have a look for that then. But he's very, very evidence-based driven. He obviously does a lot himself. So the stats he gives and the numbers, it's just fantastic if you're into that sort of thing.
Love it.
Yeah, we're mostly into eating flies over here.
Nice.
Freya's eating flies off the net curtain. Rachel, thank you very, very much for your time. I'm sure we will see you in person whenever we are allowed at the next event that comes along. And we'll tag you in all of this so people can find you. And if anyone's got anything remotely interesting or engaging to comment or ask, they are welcome to. And I'm sure we'll have you on again in months to come.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for asking me. I'm flattered and honoured after listening to the last two. So good luck with it. And I look forward to the next one. Who have you got next week?
I do believe it is Emma Story-Gordon.
Go girl. Go girl.
And then Phil Lerney, number 4.
Oh, brilliant. Great. Oh, good. I look forward to those. Thanks for asking me anyway, guys.
Not a
Good
problem.
To see your faces.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. Don't forget to check back weekly for new episodes. If you want to join the UK's largest Facebook group for personal trainers, just search for UK PTs.